Good day, this is Ali from Vermont Family Forest, here to take you on a virtual wildflower walk to help educate and promote learning what's in your backyard. There's so much happening in these next few weeks as spring emerges. It's really magical to be out in the woods and learn a little bit of our plant allies at this time. So let's go for a walk. Okay, this is one of my personal favorites, and she's just starting to come up with a heart-shaped leaf, which I'm going to unfurl to show you. Really sweet little plant. This is Asarum canadense, or wild ginger. It's a rhizome, so there we go. You can see that root right on top. Wild ginger can be used as a culinary, but in small amounts. I have dried the root and ground it and used it to make ginger snaps. I've also mixed a little bit of the root with wild ramps and made a bit of a sauté. So here is a nice little patch of wild ginger. And I cannot emphasize enough that wild harvesting plants and taking them home for food and medicine is, I feel, our birthright and something that is so wonderful to do. However, so that these plants can survive, it is of utmost importance that we sustainably wild harvest and we don't over harvest, as we've seen happen with ginseng and many other plants that are struggling due to both over harvesting as well as not having the right habitat and pollution. So again, in the sense of harvesting wild ginger, we only want to harvest if they're in abundance around us. And knowing where we are, and we're at this anticline and this rich soil, there is a lot of wild ginger here. So I know that I could take a little bit of this wild ginger, and if I were to take it in that sustainable way, would not hurt its continuation, that it can keep growing for many, many years to come. I'm going to show you a way to sustainably harvest should you want to try wild ginger. It really is not related to the ginger, the tropical ginger that we can find at the store, living up here in Vermont. But it does have very much a ginger taste with a bit of a floral component. But if you can see this root, if I had a knife with me, I could cut in between where the branches are for the flowers and take a piece of the center, thus leaving all the parts of the plant that are going to collect energy so that the plant can continue to grow throughout the year, which will allow the plant to keep growing. So I could take a snip here and a snip here and then cover it back up and take it on my way. Other plants that you might harvest, you might take the whole plant. So it's really important that you look around and you make sure that the amount that you're taking could easily be filled back in by the plant over time. It's also really important that if you do harvest a plant, you leave the space looking as much as it did before you harvested. It's of course most important to remember that plants are not inanimate objects. They are living beings, and it's really important to treat them as such. Ask them in your own metaphysical way for the gift of their food and medicine, and think of them as living beings. In that way, they're going to be able to share with you their magic of life and energy, and it will help us all to connect more with the natural world and understand that we are all here together. The plants, the animals, the rocks, the water, we're all interconnected beings, and it's really important to wild harvest with that in mind and heart. Okay, one spring wonder that's probably right outside your door is the common dandelion. A bane to some people as being a weed, but this is really a lovely plant. Although non-native to America, the thought is that dandelion, or Taraxacum officinae, came on the hooves of animals when the first settlers came. But very quickly, the natives to America knew and discovered that this plant was wonderful food and medicine. One of the doctrines of signature that we see in many of the spring edibles is yellow, and a lot of herbalists talk about how yellow is a significance that in the spring it's important to cleanse our liver, and that yellow is telling us it's time to eat a little bit more bitters to help clean the liver from the heavier foods that we eat in the winter, and winter being a time of more sedentary activity. So with my trowel in this place where I'm feeling clear that we're out of pesticides reach and we're away from the roads and we're on land where we can do sustainable harvesting, and dandelions are prolific and not an at-risk plant, I can take my trowel and see if I can get after this root. Another thing that I love to do with dandelions is when they start to bud, you can collect just the buds and they make great capers. The buds and the flowers also can be put into pancakes, which is really fun to do with kids. Although they are slightly bitter to taste, having bitter foods is something that we should not shy away from. I really enjoy the way that many Asian cultures think about flavors, and having all 5 flavors is part of what keeps us healthy and whole. It's kind of like the certain flavors attract the opposite. So eating bitter things actually can bring in sweetness to our life, and having too much sweetness in our food can bring too much bitterness in our life. So having a blend of the 5 flavors helps to really give us a good blend and mix of the metaphysical and emotional. So back to our dandelion. Dandelion greens were used by our great-grandparents quite often. But the root also is great for food and medicine. So when I get a dandelion, if I'm near a stream, I might use that to clean it up a little bit. The roots can be a little tricky to clean, but if you soak them in water and then scrub them a little bit, they clean off pretty nice. And they're actually pretty tender. I like to take the root and put it in a stir fry or a saute. Same with the leaves. They just need to be well cleaned before, so they don't get too gritty. And don't be afraid to try dandelion. It's a really lovely little plant to add to your culinary repertoire. So here we have hepatica. There's a few different hepaticas. They were widely used in the 1800s for liver ailments. With herbal medicine, they talk about a doctrine of signature with plants, so that sometimes the way that a plant looks or the color that it is or where it grows, but more about how it looks tells you what the plant is good for. And this is the old leaf. The new leaves are furled in there and look kind of fuzzy right now, but they are deeply lobed and they have this thick feeling, which told early herbalists that this was a plant that could be used for liver, lobed deep like a liver. Okay, so we have a really interesting and very prolific flower here, which if you look on the sides of the roads is really everywhere right now. Because of how chilly it has been today, this flower is staying a little tight, not fully opening. There are no apparent leaves right now, but this is coltsfoot. Many people think it looks like a funny dandelion because it is yellow, but if you look closely, it's not a dandelion at all. And it's unusual because it flowers, and then after flowering, it sends out its leaf, which looks like a colt or a young horse's hoof. That symbol, back in the time of the apothecary, was the sign of an apothecary. The Latin name for coltsfoot is tussilago farfara, which means cough, go far away. When you feel the leaf of the coltsfoot, it has a really interesting thick quality to it, and the leaf is what's used to help with coughs and lung congestion, bronchitis and asthma. but a really fun way to also use coltsfoot if sustainably harvested in a safe place is to put the flowers in fritters. Kids love it. That's all for our first walk out in the woods. We hope you get out there and connect with some of these plants, and we'll see you again soon.